and why a new deal would be sneaky bad for Dak Prescott. We'll explain. Don't miss it. Plus, a cryptic post from another quarterback might be the biggest hint yet of Tom Brady's future plans. We'll show it to you. And then, Big Papi goes scorched earth on the whistleblower in the Astro scandal. But one question, is he right? We'll answer that and all your questions as we get up with you on a Friday, starting right now. Delighted to be here on a sunny day in New York City. We are ready to roll. We got a major injury from the NBA. We got all this baseball drama that continues, but this is where we begin. We are one step closer to a new collective bargaining agreement in the National Football League. The owners voting to approve the negotiated principles of a new CBA yesterday. The 32 representatives of the NFL Players Association will have a conference call today to discuss and potentially vote on the proposal. Here are the things you need to know before you glaze over and say, I'm not interested. A lot of this does impact you as a fan. Here's where it begins. The regular season could expand to 17 games. Preseason would be reduced to 3. Couldn't come into effect until 2021 at the soonest. The playoffs would expand from 6 to 7 teams in each conference. That could happen this year. Player revenue would increase, could go all the way to 1.5% if they go to a 17-game schedule, and they will cut back hours in training camp for full speed and padded practices will be reduced. Stricter guidelines will be enforced. That's something the players really want. Now, as far as reaction from around the football world, most of it not so positive from high-profile players. J.J. Watt tweeted, hard no on that proposed CBA. The Packers' David Bakhtiari, very critical of it, talking about the split amongst all of the owners, and says, is this equation supposed to make sense? Not to mention the 0.5% only happens if we agree to an extra game a season. Hashtag know your worth. And then Richard Sherman retweeted his agreement with Darren Ravel's tweet, and I'm going to read you what Ravel posted. He said, I've been covering sports labor for 20 years. This deal the NFL owners are putting forth might be the worst deal, with the exception of the deal the NHL players accepted in 2005 after a year off. There's no way the NFLPA says yes to this. So the negative reaction, I got two players here. Quickly, Dan Graziano, you were there with the owners yesterday. When you hear this negative reaction from the J.J. Watts of the world, what thoughts go through your mind?
I just feel like they're not fully educated on what they're talking about. It's not like the owners sent over a proposal yesterday that no one had looked at before and said, hey, say yes or no to this. This has been negotiated between the union and the league for 9 or 10 months, and this is where they've gotten, and the union feels like this is as far as they're going to get, so they're putting it to their members to vote. I talked to a player last night who's been involved in the negotiations, and I mentioned the J.J. Watt tweet, and this guy said to me, all right, JJ, so go be a player rep, get involved, help negotiate the deal. So I feel like there's issues with the rank and file in the NFLPA versus the team that's been negotiating this, and we're at a point where that latter group has to sell this to that former group.
I have been saying this for years, and Marcus, I will turn to you, that the problem the NFL Players Association has is it is not defeatable. They can't overcome their problem, which is they have too many people whose interests are too diverse. If you're J.J. Watt, you can do anything. You can be against anything you want to be against, because if you miss an entire season of paychecks, A, you've made millions and millions of dollars. B, you can go make a movie someplace if you want to. But then you got players like Marcus Spears, who's a Pro Bowl player who makes a very good living but doesn't have J.J. Watt money. And then you've got the majority of the league who are guys who are genuinely living week to week and paycheck to paycheck, very well by normal human standards, but certainly can't afford to miss a lot of time. And all of those players have to be represented in one vote.
And this doesn't get headlines, but that's kind of the win in this deal, is at the minimum salary level. Minimum salaries over the life of this deal are going to go up. Instantly, they'll go up by 25%. That's more than half the players in the league operating at minimum salaries.
It's just irresponsible for J.J. Watt to tweet that. And to that point, what you were saying, G, is, listen, this is the same. I went through a CBA negotiation when I was playing in the league. There are tiers to what guys make. And based on those tiers, it's different reactions. Mm-hmm. Most guys in the NFL, I want fans to know out there, everybody in the NFL is not millionaires.
Right.
Most of these guys have to take care of every single penny that they make, because they are also paying other people to do jobs, which most people in normal jobs don't have to. Right. They have agents, they have financial guys, certain things. So it's more of a cost. It's relative, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah. But when you get a guy that has made $100 million playing football, saying it's a hard no on the CBA, right, you're not speaking for 92% of the rest of the NFL that needs to be paid.
Yeah, that's the problem. And, J.J. Watt, great talent, done tremendous work off the field, but you can't shoot out tweets like that when these guys have been in the negotiating room, in the boardroom, trying to negotiate the best deal they could. Now, it's Richard Sherman. Dan, you say these guys aren't educated. I think Richard Sherman is educated, right?
Because he's
and
been
I
involved.
respect his tweet, which is different. Unless you're going to sit there and present a comprehensive game plan that's going to achieve a different result, I don't think you should take shots at your union, the Players Association, guys representing you who are out there fighting tooth and nail to get everything they can with as little leverage as they have.
And then that's the other piece of this is I think back to the Sean Connery line from Untouchables. What are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to go on strike if you really want to dig in your heels on it?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not saying, oh, you should take what the owners offered because, I mean, I'm pro-labor. I mean, stick it to the man. I'm for that. But I don't think this body of NFL players is going to do that. And if they're not, then they have to sit back and say everything's relative. Sure, could we hold out for more? Yes, but maybe it's never coming unless we strike. Is this enough of a justification to agree to this deal?
And to your point, listen, everybody out there, and this is going to be so unpopular to say, you are not negotiating from a position of strength. I just said, you got 90% of these players that need these jobs. Guess who don't need the jobs, right? The guys you're negotiating with. I've always said, G, you heard me say this a number of times. When we are in a labor dispute or when we're in a CBA negotiation, it's good faith. Regardless of how strong and how much you want to fight, and I'm with it. I was a part of the players that was standing like, we need to do this. But the bottom line is this. When you're negotiating with the people that own the mountain, as opposed to a middleman that's trying to negotiate the diamonds with you, it's a different conversation. It's a different approach.
Yes, the comparison I would make, and I think it is an apt one, is that if I have a fight with you, I can only take it so far until you're going to get really mad, and then I'm done. And there's no further for me to go. And so, I respect J.J. Watt's right to his opinion, but at the end of the day, every player in the NFL didn't host Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago. That's not on most guys' list of options. And I don't think just randomly tweeting, I'm hard no on this, is doing anybody any good. And frankly, if he really wants to try and help the cause of the players, something like that winds up hurting their cause terribly because it is a signal to all of the owners, oh, we've got these guys exactly where we want them.
And it's a lack of understanding of what hard no means. Major League Baseball players went on strike 5 times. There's no salary cap in Major League Baseball. They canceled an entire postseason and World Series because the owners were trying to put a salary cap in place. If NFL players are out there and they are willing to do that, then hey, hard no all the way. But
and that's always been the issue, Dan. Like when we start talking about both of these leagues, NBA, MLB, and the NHL, not so much. The NBA and the MLB have other places to go to make money while they play.
Hockey too.
In the NFL, hockey too.
They're
hockey
international leagues.
See, but when you start talking about the NFL,
you're saying they can't go to Canada.
Who's going to? Right? If you listen,
it's an option.
It's an option,
but it's not the same option as play. He's right on that.
Biggest discrepancy.
Very quickly, because I promised it, I do want to sneak in this sneaky big news because one intriguing aspect of the timing of this CBA is that it could have a significant impact on one of the NFL's biggest off-season stories, and that means Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. Dan Graziano, what is it?
So currently, they're in the final league year of the current CBA, and that means different rules. Usually, you can't use the franchise tag and the transition tag in the same year, but this year, you can. Now, if there's a new agreement in place, then it would be the first year of the new CBA, and those rules would revert back to where they were before, and so if Jerry Jones wanted to franchise Dak Prescott and transition tag Amari Cooper, he couldn't. He'd have to pick one or the other. So that could affect and cost him money in those negotiations with those players. Of course, he doesn't care because of all the money he's going to make on this new CBA.
But to sort of put it as simply as we can, if they do not come to a new agreement and the new league year starts without a new CBA, the Cowboys can keep both of those guys against their will, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Pretty much. I mean, there are ways other teams could get to him, but it would be difficult. Same with Titans and Tannehill and Derrick Henry, the Bucks with Jameis Winston and Shaq Barrett. A couple teams would be affected.
So, I've always worried when we cover CBA negotiations, as I have now for 30 years, just how much fans care about that stuff. These are the things that impact you as a fan of the sport we will see. Meanwhile, how about these comments? Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who was projected to be the third pick in the draft by Mel Kiper, had some very interesting comments to the NFL Network about the team he wants to be drafted to and insight into how long he needs to rehab. Here's what he said, quote, "If you're saying to me if I can choose what team I want to play on, as far as my favorite team growing up, then I probably tell you the Cowboys. Now, I'm not trying to bump Dak. I'll learn under him. I wouldn't mind learning under whatever guy that's the starter. Give me a whole year to rest up and then go back out and compete. But I just want to go back out and play." Marcus, why in the world would he say that?
I have no idea. I just have no idea what happened last night. We got J.J. Watt talking about a hard no, Tua talking about backing up Dak. I don't have anything to say about it. It's something that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Number one.
Right.
Tua has no control over going to the Dallas Cowboys, but ask me that question again.
Let me put a spin on this for you. Let me put a spin on it. How about if he said, subliminally, he's sending a message to the Detroit Lions? Hey, I like the Lions. I can play a year behind Stafford. I can learn from Stafford, and then I'll be ready in the season. If you just change the name of the team from the Dallas Cowboys to the Detroit Lions, Detroit's probably looking at this like, this is our guy.
I know.
He's okay playing behind
There isn't any
for a
reason
year.
he couldn't have said that.
I'm just trying to get a man some help here.
I mean, I think we're giving these guys a little too much credit. I don't think they're like engineering all these grand plans behind the scenes. You remember we had a guy here named John Sawatsky used to talk to us about interviews,
Yeah,
right? And how to do it,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like he used to say, like, if silence is good because if the other person keeps talking, they'll have to fill that vacuum. It looks to me like that's what happened in this interview, right? He said something about the Cowboys, and the interviewer probably just said. And he just kept talking about the scenario where all of a sudden he's backing up Dak Prescott, and then he's taking over, and eventually he's
Look at Swagger's face.
Swagger
Monday
said,
Night
though, it's
Football
not going to
broadcaster.
happen. That's not going to happen. It's not even an option.
Ask me a question again.
What do you make of the Tua Tagovailoa to Dallas situation?
Nothing.
I'm with you.
No.
There is literally nothing to that. There is a lot to the potential CBA impacting the Dak and Amari negotiations. There is nothing to Tua Tagovailoa having grown up a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, we have other enormous news from the world of sports yesterday. Kyrie Irving's season is over. His first season in Brooklyn officially done. The Nets announcing yesterday Irving will undergo season-ending arthroscopic surgery on his right shoulder. Here's the general manager, Sean Marks, on why the team is shutting him down.
I think Kyrie even mentioned a couple times, he's been playing through pain. He's been playing and we got to give him a lot of credit for that, pushing through, and he wants to be out there with his guys. And it gets to the point where you say enough is enough. And look, again, it goes to long-term health, and the best prognosis for him right now is going to be like, look, let's shut him down and get this taken care of once and for all.
Well, if you believe in the adage the best ability is availability, Kyrie Irving has had some struggles. Over the last 3 years, he's missed 99 games, including over 30 and counting this year alone. He missed 95 games his first 6 seasons. Timmy Legler is in here with us this morning. When you first heard this yesterday, what was your first reaction?
This could be a blessing for Kyrie Irving and a blessing for the Nets. It sounds crazy because you don't want anybody to be hurt, but here's what I mean, particularly start with Kyrie Irving. First of all, if you're not right, go get right, because the one thing that people have little regard for is star players playing through injuries. Right? The bottom line is results. So if he's going out there playing and he's not playing well and they're not winning games, it doesn't matter if he's dealing with a shoulder injury and playing through it. He's not going to get any medal for that. Instead, he's going to be criticized for that. So if you're not right, go get right. But the bigger picture is this. This team was going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, with or without Kyrie Irving. He would have then had 3 consecutive years since he left Cleveland where it's going to be laid at his feet, his team's failures overall, because we can agree it was a failed experiment in Boston.
Yes.
Him trying to be a leader, it was something he struggled with. That team underachieved. He got blamed for most of that, and he's actually owned it and said he could have been better leader and could have been better in certain situations. He goes to Brooklyn. Without Kevin Durant, he's back in the same boat. He's trying to lead a group of younger guys who, by the way, Greeny, we all admired last year what the Nets did, right? We thought they overachieved.
Yeah.
Like Kenny Atkins got the most out of that roster. They were a tough out in the first round for the Sixers. We admired them. Then Kyrie comes in, expectation level's going to go up. They weren't going to live up to that. They're going to lose in the first round again. He would get blamed for it. So now, go get right. Come back next year in a much more comfortable lane. And that's the lane next to a superstar where you can just go play. and the responsibility and accountability and leadership accountability falls in the lap of someone else. That's where he was at in Cleveland. That's when he played the best basketball of his career. Very comfortable with that. The microphones are in front of someone else's face every day. That's where Kyrie Irving's at his best. Just go ball. Next year, he can do that. So for me, it could be a blessing for him and a blessing for the Nets that they now don't have to look, is the star coming back for a few games? Is he not playing? Now they know that's off to the side. They can go find an identity amongst themselves while he is out. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. In fact, when they first came together in Brooklyn, my first thought was, how are they going to get through this year? This is exactly to the point you're making, not the natural spot for Kyrie to be. In some ways, I agree with you. It almost would have been better if he hadn't played at all this year. So how would you assess where they are? If you look at the Nets right now, if their goal in putting these two guys together was that in 2021, we're going to try and win the NBA championship, with a healthy Durant and a healthy Kyrie and whatever they can do, are they on track to do that?
Well, it's impossible to know it without seeing Kevin Durant back, and we're going to have to wait and see. The nature of his injury.
Let's say he's real close to his
Let's say he
apex.
and Kyrie come back next year close to 100%.
Yes.
Well, they're a contending team in the Eastern Conference. There's no question about it. So from that standpoint, big picture and long-term picture for the Nets, I think ultimately they'll get there, assuming both of these guys are healthy next year. They'll fulfill what they thought they were going to be, which is a contending team in the Eastern Conference. You know, obviously shutting it down now, the Nets are a team they're going to go out and play with grit and all the things we said about them last year, and ultimately lose to either the Milwaukee Bucks or the Toronto Raptors in the first round. That's what they are going to be without Kyrie. But I don't think you have to shelve what we thought this could be when they first
No, I think you're 100% right. I think sometimes what sounds like really bad news winds up being the best thing that could have happened. In the meantime, another day, another round of drama in the Astros cheating scandal. Yesterday, Red Sox legend David Ortiz talked with the media and expressed his displeasure with former Astros pitcher Mike Fiers blowing the whistle on the whole sign-stealing scheme. Here's Big Papi.
I'm mad at this guy, the pitcher that came out talking about it, and let me tell you why. Oh, after you make your money, after you get your ring, you decide to talk about it? Why don't you talk about it during the season when it was going on? Why you didn't say, I don't want to be no part of? Oh, now, so you look like a snitch. You know what I mean? Why you got to talk about it after? Why, that's my problem, you know. Why nobody say anything while it was going on?
And that video you see there is Mike Fiers, who's now pitching with the A's. Buster Olney is live with us here. Buster, what has been the reaction across the sport to what Big Papi said yesterday?
Yeah, Greeny, just 3 minutes ago, I bumped into David Ortiz and followed up on what he said yesterday. He said, look, I'm glad the truth came out, but I think what David's objection is that old school perspective of, look, what is said in the clubhouse, what happens in the clubhouse should stay in the clubhouse. And going around from camp to camp this spring, I've heard a lot of that from other players. And keep in mind, for David Ortiz, this is very personal. He played with Alex Cora. He's great friends with Alex Cora, who was the bench coach of the 2017 Astros, the manager of the Red Sox in 2018 and 2019, and he's seen the life trajectory of a great friend completely changed by all this. So he has questions. Why did Mike Fiers come out 2 years after the fact? Was it when he joined a rival? And one other thing he said to me, Greeny, which is interesting, he said, look, all these players who are criticizing Rob Manfred need to back off because he feels like that he has a very complicated job trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, there's so much to that. We're going to do a little roundtable discussion on the Fiers piece of this a little later in the show. But I want to get to one other thing, because many are criticizing Manfred for not taking enough action against the Astros. You wrote an interesting column this week proposing a censure of the 2017 World Series title. What would that look like?
Yeah, because we know that he can't discipline the players. They've already been granted immunity during the course of investigation, and it's not even clear that he would have the power to strip the 17 Astros of their title. So my idea is to get a vote, a resolution of censure from all the owners to permanently brand the 2017 Astros with that scarlet letter C for cheaters in history. And then at that point, if he gets that, you would assume the vote would be 29-1 among team owners. He could forward that to the Players Association and tell them, look, we want a bipartisan resolution to notate the Astros through history. It may not feel as sexy as disciplining individual players, but the weight of history would be behind it.
That's fascinating, Buster, because you go back to like the controversy generations ago about an asterisk next to a home run record, Roger Maris and Babe Ruth and all the rest of it. This would sort of be an asterisk on the 2017 championship, yes?
100%. Look, it would be unprecedented, and while for some players they wouldn't be thrilled about that, I think that through the years it would be meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think so. The reprimand actually sometimes I think is an underrated form of punishment. Buster, awesome. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. We will check in with you as soon as we can. Meantime, we're just getting rolling this morning here on Get Up. Coming up, the words Patriots and rebuild have not been used in the same sentence in more than a generation. But is that their looming reality? We'll talk about it. And then, just yesterday, Timmy Legs predicted a first-round exit for the Sixers in the playoffs. Then Embiid went nuts last night. Did it change Timmy's mind? You'll find out in this hour of Get Up, ESPN.